I had a little problem with the Cayman. We're driving this weekend, and it's been really good. There's a few things going on with it we need to tend to. One is the coffin arm. The one's got a little bit of play in it. It's not bad. It's not wearing the tires. It's not causing much of a problem. But it's always in the back of my mind. But, so day before yesterday, I drove to my girlfriend's house, and I noticed a couple times as we were driving this thing, and just going slow, it kind of sounded like, almost like you hit a rumble strip. Like as you're going up to the stop sign, it's like, rump. And when it did it, it kind of, not really like somebody hit the brakes, but it kind of slowed down for a second. And I thought maybe it's something on the road. Like you couldn't see anything until after you're past the spot, so you can't look at the road and see if there is that, like grooves in the road. So that's weird. So yesterday we drove to the city, which is about an hour and a half away. Did fine until we got almost all the way there, and driving on the interstate going 70. It seems like it's almost like it made the rumbling noise and like somebody just bumped the brakes on me. It took speed off of us. And it did it once real hard and once again barely. And I told her, I said, that's kind of a weird deal. You know, we'll have to be careful. It was still daylight at that time. And so we went somewhere to eat. When I backed out of the parking spot, it backed up and just stopped. Like something's like binding up, or like there's a chunk of gear in something, or something's going on. So I pull forward and backwards, and finally it come loose. And on the way home, we barely heard it click once or twice, and that was it. So we're made it back in one piece, thank God. Have it on the lift. So we're going to lift it up in there. I'm going to show you what we found, what I think is what's going on. All right, so here we are at the driver rear wheel. And we can see here, there's a little bit of grease on there. And you can see something's going on with the axle right there. See if I can make it make the noise again. When we first lifted it up, you could hear it. It was like hard to turn and like crunching. It's like it was right in here. So we're gonna do a few things here. We're gonna start it up on the lift and put it in gear. So I can just make it crunch, but I don't know. I'm not sure what would cause that. There was no play in the joint at all. It's just slack in the transmission. What we need to do before we call this good, we probably need to go ahead and change the transmission fluid and probably the diff oil while we're right here, and it's just a few-minute deal. But we'll see how she goes here. We'll put it in gear first, and if it's obvious it's in here, we need to order this. And that's something had to break in the joint, but there's no play in it all. Yeah, nothing wrong at all. But these CV axles are stupid expensive for OEM one. For a new OEM one, you're looking at least $600. Depends on what side it was. It could take as much as $900 for one new OEM joint. If we put a Chinese axle on here, it's not going to work out. Also, these engine mounts, we noticed. I think I know what's happened here. The engine mounts are up here, and they're very, very soft. In fact, you could take a pry bar or anything. I'm going to grab it real quick, and you could actually move that whole thing. And I think I know exactly what's happened here. And like it's moving way too much on both sides. So let me tell you a little backstory on this. We did the decal on this car and put these different mufflers on it, put the boiler mufflers on it. It made a lot more power, like a lot more. And then we put it on E85. And since it's a manual, now my red Cayman was on E85 also, but it was a Tiptronic. So it kind of has some regulation to how, like what the drivetrain could do. But with the manual, this thing has aftermarket clutch in it, so it bangs pretty hard. When we had an 85 with the open exhaust on it, straight through boiler mufflers, no cat setup, making a lot more power, What the internet says, probably around 360. If we would have got the Softronic tune with that setup, they're in close to 380. And a lot of guys says, no, that's not the case. It's probably 299. No, it's not. It's a lot more power. If you don't have one of these cars and you haven't done that mod, do that. If you're running decatted or race headers on it, it's your challenge. Go mix in a half a tank E85 or a full tank of pump E85, and it'll be dramatic. However, all that being said, I got a little bit rough with it one time, and then after that I heard like the engine, like the motor mounts moving up and down a lot. I think I broke it then. This CV axle issue could be an issue from that motor moving around a lot and flexing that joint too much, and finally it broke a little piece off of the cage in that knuckle, or something. The other option of this is shear a tooth off of the differential. I'll go to like 5th. So it's the next day. We did figure out what's wrong with the car though. It's not what a person may think, but we did suspect that's what it could be. I'm going to pull this light in here so you can see. And you can see up on this brake drum for the e-brake, this brake shoe is on there. This brake shoe is missing because that brake shoe is in the bottom of the disc, and this thing's pretty grooved up. Also, we're getting a big lip on our disc, and they're getting kind of chattered looking. So it's good it's not the axle or his transmission. However, I think the diagnostics here is going to be new brake shoes on both sides. They weren't that much, they were 50 some bucks. The brake pads are a little less than half on the back. The fronts are about the same way. I think what I'm going to do all new centric brake disc, and we're going to do a whole new set of Brembo pads on this car. How much will all that cost? I would say with the brake shoes, with all the brake stuff, that comes with new sensors and everything. And we may have to order, there's little shims on the back of those pads. We may have to get some of those. In fact, I need to pop this off and look and make sure which ones we got. We're probably looking at $500-600 bucks with all that stuff. We also need to do something with the CV axle boots. They're all leaking a little bit. So I need to figure out if somebody sells a whole kit, either the glue together ones, if they have like a factory type one of those, or if we got to take the axles out, take the circlip off, and replace all the boots. But I think that's something we should do. So they are starting to lose a little bit of grease. There's no play in them yet, and I'm very confident that this is our noise and this is our issue. And then here, before too much longer, we'll probably do catted headers on it. Catted headers for this thing, you notice we had to decat this car because they were stopped up and it stank. It was terrible. To get some okay catted headers, they start about $1,500 and go up. And a lot of you guys are, oh, you should get the Soul Performance ones. You know how much? It's like $4,000 just for the headers. That's not a horsepower edition, really. That's just like, so you can say you have Soul headers on it, right? And unless you're into people laying in your car and looking at what headers you got, that's not going to matter now, is it? But we do want some kind of converter back in this car because it does smell like a chainsaw when it runs, like all Porsches do. And it's stanky. So we pull up the Chick-fil-A and we're stanking everybody out in the whole parking lot because we're decatted. Probably not the best thing. Also, this car is a little bit of like an air rushing sound on deceleration. I'm not sure. Our red Cayman did not have that. It very well could be these factory manifolds. By the way they're set up, they're not very high flow, and there may be something that's holding that back and disrupting the airflow. That's kind of the way it sounds. We did do the Borla exhaust in this car, and that helped a little bit, but that top gear setup that was on it, that was not. The mufflers are actually welded in backwards. They had a big lip where the air goes around them on the inlets. even the exhaust guy is like, man, this is screwed up, right? And that was a $1,000 catback. So there is all that. But overall, the Cayman lives the other day. Also, our passenger side front coffin arm has a bunch of play in it. When we got this car, it had a brand new driver's side one on it, and the passenger side one had a tiny bit of play. Now that play's gotten a little bit worse in the ball joint area. The driver side one is still brand new. We made us do the passenger side because that way it's good. I'm thinking usually when you see that on these cars, usually the coffin arm is rusted in. They couldn't get it out, so they just left it. Luckily here we have all the tools and stuff to make it happen, boys. We can make it happen, no problem at all. But anyhow, that's gonna be it, guys. Closing out this video, and I guess back to the 996 engine.